Good evening everyone, good evening members of the committee, other members and also members of staff. First item tonight is to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of April. Are members happy those to sign up with the correct record? Thank you. Apologies for absence.
Wendy Randall.
Wendy Randall. Any other apologies we're aware of? Okay, thank you. Declarations of members' interests. I either disclose them now or at the time they come up in the meeting. Are there any to disclose now? If not, we'll move on. Thank you. The first substantive item tonight is the Council of Development Charter. Committee development needs. We do this every year just to see what we feel as a committee we might like as a development or some sort of training proposal. The thing I always think about is, bear in mind we've got some new members of the committees, maybe holding a top team event between the strategy group members and some senior officers. If that's just one idea for anything to mix. Liz, any ideas from your point of view? The HR portfolio?
That's a good idea. I mean, we did it before and it was very useful.
It's quite good in terms of building up the team building side of things.
Yes, I would agree with that, Chairman. I was going to suggest that at the very least we should have a gathering of all the portfolio holders so they can each justify themselves to their colleagues, because it's quite clear that not everybody knows what everybody else is actually responsible for and is actually doing, but a top team event is a much better idea.
That's good, thank you for that. Abigail.
Oh, thank you, yes. They both sound good, but of course they both exclude committee members of strategy group who aren't portfolio holders.
No, that's not including you.
Really,
You are strategy group members.
I am, yes, when you say portfolio holders, Gavin.
No,
that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
That's why his idea is better than mine.
Well, I've never been clear what top team is. What
The
is
top team is obviously senior members and senior officers. That's the top team.
So am I included as a senior member? Because
Well, you're on the strategy group and you are vice chair, you're vice deputy leader of the Labour Party group.
right. Well, if that makes me member of the top team, I'm delighted.
You're the strategy group, mate.
It's easy, I can be got one, so you can.
You're happy, you're happy over going on that.
I'm
That's
happy.
good. Okay, thank you. Chris.
Chairman, I've already started the conversation with Audra and Tony with regard to financial training for these.
I'm talking about this
In fact, it will be for, I bring it up at this point because it will be for everybody.
Right.
So that it will be for here, but it will also be
for all members.
It will be for all members as well, so that members do understand, everybody understands the detail of what we're looking at when we take votes in council on finance.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Chris, for that. This is more about this particular committee. Thank you. This is Colin.
Am I correct in saying, thank you Chairman for allowing me to speak, am I correct in saying that technically you need financial training if voting upon financial matters at strategy?
I thought more councils. At one time there was a need to have training before you voted on
The one for one.
Sorry, Audra.
Obviously, when members are taking decisions on finances, it certainly helps if they have an understanding of them. But the only one where, as the 151 officer, I'm sort of obliged to make sure you have training is when you're voting on the investment strategy.
That's the one, that's right. I think you should have that application. Are we happy to arrange a top team event then for the strategy group members?
Very yes.
Thank you. Thank you. We're on to the next item then, which is the community cultural literacy issues, Malton artificial football pitch, Councillor Owen Hills.
Right. Thank you Chairman. Right, I'd like to refer you all to the report regarding Malton artificial football pitch and the three recommendations you have before you. And just very briefly, that the council provides forward funding of up to £300,000 towards the proposed pitch at Malton. That the council's forward funding to be repaid from planning obligations, in particular that from Northampton North Sue. For anybody who queries it, that's sustainable urban extension of £257,000 and if necessary, seal money. But the terms of this funding are as set out in the strategy group report, including a requirement for secure long-term availability of the pitch for the long-term community football use. I'd like to refer you to 4.1 and make a note that the FA has met with the council and are fully supportive. I think that's a big bonus. On 4.2 they have committed £350,000, and it's also noted they will work with Malton Magpies Football Club, which from my experience is a well-established and a well-run club. There's no doubt about that. This, as stated, will be there for community use, and I believe will make a valid contribution to our corporate strategic plan. For example, promoting healthier, safer, stronger communities, encouraging physical activity, and also help to tackle obesity. I feel, and sum up, that basically it's good for Malton Magpies, it's good for the community, it's good for the District Council's corporate strategic plan, and also I think it's worth noting that it's good for the future growth of Malton itself. So I would ask that this recommendation is supported, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Goss. Open for debate, discussion. Councillor Guildford.
Just a couple of questions. I do support the scheme before I ask questions. One on environmental, because there will naturally be some effects. So sometimes, when you're talking about animals or something that's detrimental, you ask for trees to be planted or in its place or anything like that. And then on the financial, never like the word should. And it says the council will be initially expending £300,000 of capital which it should receive back. What if we don't?
Well, what I would say to you is that when you look at this application, anything you do is never without a risk of some sort, but I think the risks here are minimised, in as much that, first of all, one of the questions that I asked is what checks have we done, and I believe there's been several checks done by our officers. And secondly, when you look at the FA, for the FA to recommend and say that they will put £350,000 forward, their checks that they do are very, very stringent. You don't get that sort of money unless everything has been checked and come out quite thoroughly. So I think the chances of that happening I would say are minimal. Simon Bowd might like to add something to that.
Okay. Simon,
Chairman, I did notice that Councillor Chandler had his hand up, so I don't know if you want to...
Well, I was going to let you go first on that point.
In terms of the two questions raised by Councillor Guildford, in terms of the environmental impact of the new pitch, obviously it is addressed in section 5.4 of the report. Essentially, you're talking about putting an artificial pitch on what is currently closely mown grass, so there's no great loss. But if there are any particular issues to be addressed, I'm sure they're picked up through the planning application process. And if that requires some landscaping, then that would be done. In terms of the should, there is clearly a risk, but we think it's very low risk, in as much as the vast majority of the money is identified from the Northampton North Sue application. The planning committee approved heads of terms for that 106 agreement. The 106 isn't yet signed, so we can't be absolutely definitive, but it's very unlikely it will cause some problem.
Okay, Councillor. Okay. Got a few names here, so I'm just going in the order the hands up. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I also welcome the proposal. I think we've got obesity above the national average amongst adults in the district, so anything that encourages physical activity is welcome. My primary question was the same as Councillor Guildford's, really, about the should. There did seem to be a lot of ifs and buts and provisionals and perhaps in the report, but I accept the assurances we've just had. My other query was on later on the application section. Crime and disorder, the sentence seems to be unfinished. I'm just interested to see what the blank is going to be. Greater engagement of a larger number of people with. And then finally...
Very pleased you read the papers.
I do, thoroughly. But I'm genuinely interested. And then on equalities, I just wanted some assurance. I'm absolutely sure that Malton FC will be encouraging equal participation of girls and women in football as men and boys. But just seek that assurance that that's happening, because otherwise I think it should be referenced in the equalities section.
Is it an interest that you a football player?
I do play football, yeah.
Well done. Thank you.
If I may come in there, Chair, one thing that Malton Magpies does do, it runs several teams of all age groups and of both sexes. They have a very successful girls team.
Excellent.
So, and one of the things that they did get the an award from the FA for the work they do regarding that. So yes, a very well run and a very fair club, I think would be the word to say.
Fantastic, also that reassurance. Simon, do you want to just finish the unfinished sentence?
Indeed, I can only apologise for that. I thought we'd corrected it before it was circulated, but never mind. I think you can probably guess where the sentence was going. Essentially what it was supposed to say, if we provide facilities for people to play sport in positive activity, it is likely to take some of them away from activity which might be less helpful to their society.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Charger.
Thank you, Chairman. I simply wanted to, first of all, say I fully support this proposal and the recommendation. The should, in the same sentence as SIL, is correct because we haven't adopted SIL. There's no guarantee that we will.
Do you know something we don't know?
Well, no, I don't know. It's something you don't know, but it's up to the council to decide whether or not it wants to adopt SIL.
And you're the portfolio holder who runs that.
Yeah.
Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. 4.1 is pleasing, gratifying, I would think, to the people of Daventry that the news is that Daventry Sports Park will have in the future, emphasis on future, a similar arrangement. Paragraph 2 on page 6, car parking will probably be using the school car park. Picking up on Councillor Campbell, I think that needs to be clarified. There is nothing in the report that says the longevity of artificial pitches, so perhaps that would be clarified, thank you. Pleasing that the maintenance arrangements, full repairing lease, for want of a better word, is with Morton Magpies. I picked up on a typo in the last paragraph, but I'm surprised that Alan Chandler didn't. As always, which such ventures, it should be as always with such ventures. However, I think the crunch comes with the very worst scenario that I can see within this report, Chairman, is we would be £43,000 out of pocket. That's the very worst scenario. And to get an all singing, all dancing 3G AstroTurf for a possibility of £43,000, it could be zero, and more likely than not it will be zero, is certainly a way forward for this council.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Do you want to come back and then to the first 2 points? Councillor Hills, what do you want to say about that?
Well, I'd just say yes, that car parking has to be sort of finalised, I think, as far as I'm aware, and that will be done. And that obviously is going to be considered, I would think, when we look at the planning situation. So, you know, that's something we need to look at. I agree with Councillor Paul that I too welcome the fact that not only is there going to be an artificial pitch for Moulton, but also we will see the benefit of Browns Road. There is some artificial pitches there. They have lasted, I would think now, for about 15, 16 years. It was just unfortunate the first year they were put there. Some young people actually dug a hole and put a canister and set fire to it, and we had to carry out some repairs, but that was the first year. But since then, they've lasted about 15 years. So I think when you look at artificial surfaces now, and the strides that have been made, and the way that clubs use it now, I think you're looking at least 15 to 20 year period.
Thank you, Councillor Hills, for that. Simon, don't add anything to the questions we
A
have.
couple of things if I may. On the longevity pitches, I will definitely bow to Councillor Hill's superior knowledge. All I would say is, even when it comes to the point that the pitch is replaced, the infrastructure, the substrate, the fencing, and all the other bits and pieces would remain. So it's not a question of having to spend another £650,000 at that point. In terms of what's been commented on a few times, actually, the various possibilities and probabilities and so on in the report, ideally, I would have actually held this report back a little while and brought it back when some of these things were more closely nailed down. But but because of the FA's timing and their pressure to see progress, it was important to have a decision from council that we could put back into the process and help this move forward. So I trust we can nail these things down. If ultimately we can't, obviously we wouldn't be able to implement what it is council has asked us to do, and that's just the reality of it. But we're not proposing to take any particular risks here. If, for example, there is no solution for car parking, then clearly the project won't be able to proceed. And all the examples really is waste a few minutes of situation time.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. So basically, I think Councillor Paul raised the point about financial risk, maximum risk, but also other risks which may or may not occur, that we want to proceed because obviously it's an opportunity and we don't take the opportunity now, it'll be missed.
Exactly.
And that's why we've got this external funding. Thank you for that. Can you move on to Councillor Liz Griffin?
Well, thank you, Chairman. I quite support the answer.
Question B, Councillor Campbell?
No, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Warren?
I'd just like to point out that the emphasis has been on Malton as being the benefit of this 3G pitch, but in fact it's nearly all the villages around Malton itself that do benefit from it as well, because the catchment area for Malton Magpies is very large, so it's not just purely the village, it's the district that's actually going to benefit from this, or should I say the eastern part of the district. So it's not just purely a Malton facility.
That's a good point, Councillor Warren. Thank you.
Yes, Chairman, if I may, that's a very valid point, because I know the area that Malton draws its teams from, and I've been to several of their presentations and their five-a-side days and spoken to people who have come from the outlying villages, so it certainly serves, I will serve, I believe, a community need.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Not knowing the area very well at all, and not knowing where things are actually sort of sited, I just wondered about the pavilion facilities. I mean, what pavilions facilities will be used? Will they be the Magpies' present facilities, if they have them, or will there be Malton School, or what? And are these up to standard?
It's best position to answer that.
If I may, I go back to the days when Malton Magpies just had a very small sort of one dressing room and one hall. They have now, as a result of their fundraising and donations, etc., got an excellent dressing room facility with a number of changing rooms, showers, a bar and a hall which is also used for other activities as well. So it wouldn't have got the FA mark if those facilities weren't up to scratch.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Thank you. Any more questions? Are we happy now to agree with the three recommendations before you? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hills. Move on now to strategic planning issues. The first one is Charlton Neighbourhood Area and Neighbourhood Forum application. You should have a map being done out this evening like that. That map should be handed out. I'll hand over to Councillor Charlton.
Thank you, Chairman. We've seen some of these before, but we do have some new members amongst us, so I will just give a little bit of background. As part of the changes to the planning system introduced in the last government, they introduced, among other things, the idea of a neighbourhood area and a neighbourhood development plan. And the first stage in moving towards a neighbourhood development plan is the designation of a neighbourhood area. In the case of a parish or town council, that's very easy. The council can bring forward such a recommendation, and provided the council approves for that, that can go forward, and then they can go forward for the next stage, which is to develop their plan. The application is subject to a 6-week consultation period anyway, but in this case, Charlton does not have a parish council, has a parish meeting, therefore the provisions of the Act allow for the formation of a neighbourhood forum, which is a body which can be recognised and draw up a neighbourhood plan, the first step of which is to designate the neighbourhood area. Excuse me. Now, it seems to be rather odd that if you're a parish council, you might have a few people representing the parish, And you could quite easily, by majority vote, have 4 people decide it's a good idea if we have a neighbourhood plan, let's designate a neighbourhood area. If you don't have a council, then you have to have a neighbourhood forum. And the rules are rather strict there. It has to have a minimum of 21 people. Those must be people drawn from across the area to be designated, and there must be at least one of each of the groups of people who live there, people who work there, or people who are elected representatives thereof. A neighbourhood forum also must have a written constitution, which must make clear exactly what its terms of reference are and who's allowed to be in it and who isn't. And so, for the first time, this council has had to consider a neighbourhood forum application alongside an associated neighbourhood area designation application. Now, members may recall that at an earlier strategy group, we made a decision that because of a change to the timetable imposed by central government, that decisions about neighbourhood areas could be made by the strategy group or by officers and portfolio holders and elected members for the ward in order to meet the government's new timetable restrictions if it didn't coincide with a council meeting. However, in this case, because the application was made before the rule change, we believe that the appropriate way to process it is through the old scheme, which is strategy group will see it as a recommendation and then it will go forward to council. Now, this may have the anomalous outcome that it's possible that somebody could have applied for a neighbourhood area designation after the rule change and get the answer before these people do. But that's something that, over which we don't have any control. So what we're asked to do here is simply to note that a proper application has been made for both neighbourhood forum and neighbourhood area designation. You have a map before you, which now you see the coloured issue, you can see where the parish boundary actually is, because on the black and white one it was difficult to discern. And thank you for that extra effort that went into producing that. So I'm simply asking that in order that these people should be able to make progress with the production of a neighbourhood development plan, that we should follow the recommendations that designate Charlton Parish as a neighbourhood area. It will be the area described by the parish boundary, and for the avoidance of doubt, it would not be designated as a business area. For new members, a business area is a neighbourhood area which is largely made up of commercial or business enterprises, and that the second recommendation is that we should approve the Charlton Neighbourhood Forum designation as the appropriate body to take forward the neighbourhood development plan. That's it, Chair.
Thanks, Steve. Councillor Charlton, for that explanation for new members. It's very pleasing to see some of our new members here to see how the strategy group works. So thank you for attending. Any questions on this from the committee members? Okay, so Councillor Campbell.
Just a very quick question, just to set it in context again for new members, perhaps. How many neighbourhood areas have been designated so far?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
Is it more than half or?
It's approaching 40%, I think.
40%.
Thank you.
Now, if you knew that question was going to be asked, Councillor Charlton, you should have the answer ready. Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Page 11, second paragraph, Charlton does not fulfil the requirement, accordingly should not be designated a business area. Does that affect or not the Charlton Tunnel project? Or would it affect the Charlton project?
It's not the KHB.
Yeah.
I think the simple answer to that is no, Chairman, because a business area is one that is predominantly commercial or business development.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Wesley.
Yeah, does it have to conform to all the consultation processes?
Oh, yeah.
This doesn't preclude anything.
No.
It's just the mechanism of how it actually comes to us. Really. Is that all we're saying?
Yes, there has been a 6-week consultation period for both the neighbourhood area and also the neighbourhood forum application. There was yes, that's all.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions? If not, I'll be happy to read the 2 recommendations. Thank you. This time it's the neighbourhood area application for Welford, Councillor Chandler.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Following the explanation just given, I think this one is very straightforward. It's a parish council asking for its parish to be designated as a neighbourhood area. I draw your attention to the map. You'll see that the world ends with Welford. A clear space where it should say here be dragons is of course Leicestershire. This is straightforward, Chairman. I think I can just put forward the recommendation that this application by Welford Parish Council for the designation of a neighbourhood area be approved. It should be known as the Welford neighbourhood area, and again, for the avoidance of doubt, it will not be designated as a business area.
Thank you. Any questions from committee or other people on that? If not, are you happy to agree the recommendation?
Agree.
Good. Thank you. Moving on to resources issues now. First one, development control resources. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Chair. Daventry District Council has seen higher than anticipated demand for its development control services since 2013. Demand continues to be high and is forecast to remain so. Actions have been taken to deal with this increase in demand by employing additional temporary staff through employment agencies and by directly recruiting temporary staff on fixed-term contracts. Demand for experienced development control professionals has continued to increase, with recruitment and retention now even more challenging. To address this situation, it is now necessary to consider making the fixed-term development posts permanent. The funding required will be met from the planning salaries reserve or revenue growth as appropriate. For reputation and financial reasons, it's essential that the Council does everything possible to meet national performance targets and thereby avoid designation as a poorly performing local planning authority, which would allow developers to apply for planning permission directly to the Secretary of State. Ensuring that development control continues to be appropriately resourced will enable major applications to be determined in time and provide sufficient resources to defend decisions and appeals, both of which are essential to avoid special measures. I therefore request the Strategy Group approves the recommendation that an additional budget of 157k be made available. This will be offset by corresponding growth in income from planning. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Long. As in London yesterday, District Council networks in the Assembly, it's very interesting there across the country that the number of applications coming in are increasing. There's been quite a call from some districts to actually increase planning fields fees again for government because they're finding it quite stretched at the moment. I'm not sure that's the case here, but certainly that's what they're saying nationally, that they'd like to see the fees increase maybe a bit more to help their financial position. But it's also a struggle recruiting people in the planning arena because there's a demand everywhere at the moment. I think it's all of a sudden we find there's a requirement for people, more people to be employed in the public sector certainly, not the actual private sector as well.
Less people and more demand, Chairman.
That's right, yeah. Any questions or comments? Councillor Charter.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I fully endorse this. Part of the reason, perhaps, for the increase in recent applications is because people want to get outline permission before facilities in place. But I also wanted to take this opportunity to point out to members that it's not just the things that we've just heard of, dealing with these applications quickly and defending decisions, if necessary, appeals, but we're also short of resource for carrying out some other essential matters which are dear to my heart, such as the Part 2 plan, the Gypsies, Travellers and Travelling Show People plan, and the review of the conservation areas.
Thank you. A lot going on in your portfolio, I know that, Councillor Chanter. That's good to see. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wayne Howard.
Yeah, I also fully support the paper. I just have a word, the English language, which I'm struggling with a little bit on page 22, which is twice. And when you employ people, being a local employer, the word permanent actually means permanent. And I have a little concern about that word. Full-time employment is slightly different to permanent. Can we look into that before we go much further, because permanent means longevity for life.
10 years. No, so, Tony?
Yes, for you, Chairman. In our employment terms, in terms of the way we deal with employees in the establishment, a permanent post means one that is written into the establishment. It doesn't mean employment for life necessarily, because if the situation changes and the demand for planning work goes down, then we would have to review that situation. So it is a full-time job for permanent for as long as we can see forward at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a subsidiary question, really. In view of what my colleague, Councillor Chandler. When the SIP is adopted by the council, as it should be, is it going to be backdated to April the 1st for those applications received after?
Can't be. That's the answer, no. It's only the applications after it's adopted that will actually be subject to SIL. That's why there's been a rush to get applications before then.
So those who put in planning applications now, before the SIL is adopted by the council, will not have to pay the SIL.
That's right, yeah.
Strictly speaking, Chairman, I think it's the decision date, isn't it?
Decision date, Maria?
So just to clarify, through you, Chairman, some of the applications we've received now that have been validated now, we are prepared for them to be either Section 106 or SIL, because they may not be determined before council adopts. So there is a period of time where we're prepared for both scenarios, but only one regime will exist at a time.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Councillor Long.
Yep, may I just clarify something, Chairman? With regard to the recommendation, I'll just reread it.
Thank you.
I therefore request the strategy group approves the recommendation that an additional budget of 157k be made available. This will be offset by corresponding growth in income from planning fees.
That's fine. You've got that.
Just for clarification, Chairman.
Just for clarification. Okay. It's very helpful. Thank you. Councillor Gilbert.
It was just going on from Councillor James's line of thought. So we've got the high uptake now, and we haven't got still, so you could say a lot of developers will do applications in before we adopt that. So when we do adopt that, we could see a drop.
Potentially. Potentially, yes. That's the point. We don't know. Potentially, yes. There's a rush to go, but just generally nationally, there's been, because obviously it's still in different places all around the country, different councils have where they are still, but nationally there's been an increase in applications generally. So I don't think it's just still alone that will more than one reason why the applications are coming in not coming in. Yeah. Councillor Osborne.
So, like you just said at the end, is only one of the reasons that it may be. Yeah. There are other reasons, more obvious as well, Chairman.
Economic growth being one of them.
Yes, which is the most obvious.
Okay. Are there any more speakers on this?
No.
You can say that without looking behind you. Agreed. Are we happy to agree the recommendation? Agreed. Thank you. God, amazing, Steve. How's your power? Second one for resources is planning appeal costs. Councillor Gilbert. Oh, sorry. My apologies, actually. Councillor Long. My apologies, please.
Thank you, Chair. Daventry District Council is now preparing its defence of two major new planning appeals. 41 houses on land at Welford Road, Belton, and 70 houses on land off Barbie Road, Kilsby. For the reasons stated in the noted report, in-house legal services do not currently have sufficient capacity to deal with the Belton case, and in both cases, it's likely that council will have to be appointed to defend both of the appeals. The estimated cost of in-house legal services, counsel, expert witnesses, and additional administrative support for both appeals is 45k. 8k for counsel for Belton, 35k for witnesses and counsel for Kilsby, and 2k for additional administrative support. It's important to local residents and the planning committee that these appeals are properly defended. Whatever the outcome of the appeals, failure to provide an adequate defence of the reasons for refusal could lead to an award of costs against the council for unreasonable behaviour. These could be a considerable amount. The foregoing, I believe, is a timely reminder of how decisions taken at planning committee meetings can and do have wider financial implications for the council. I therefore request Strategy Group approves the recommendation that earmarked reserves of £45,000 be made available for two major planning appeals at Belton and Kilsby if required.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just ask you one question back of that? Is bearing in mind we haven't got the in-house capacity, is the actual additional cost costing us more than it would do if it's dealt with by in-house?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and the answer.
Just help to understand, obviously, the increase in cost.
The answer is yes, yes, straight as
I appreciate you new to your roles, and no doubt you can pick this up anyway.
Yeah.
Just to understand what those increased costs are, if we had more deals coming forward.
It's like taking any external fee. You're going to pay more than you do for in-house journalism.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you, Chris. Councillor...
Yeah, can I just ask if the defence is robust? Obviously not being totally aware of all the situations. I mean, I'm not saying that anyone would do this on just a whim, but I mean, it would be quite nice to know that there was at least a fair wind in the council's favour.
Well, I think I'll allow the chairman of the planning to answer that one, Councillor Osborne.
I think we have got a pretty good planning committee that realises the result of making silly, stupid, not unfounded, incorrect decisions, and it's very rare that we see one that leads this council into costs. It is very aware, and it's a very aware committee, probably one of the most aware we've ever had.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. I hope that gives you some reassurance, Councillor Wesley. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I take advice from the chair of planning and officers. Interesting that one of these was refused by the planning committee in accordance with officers' advice, and the other one, which was refused, was against officer advice. Councillor Long read out the paragraph at the bottom of page 25. But the bottom of the legal constitutional on 5.3, it is essential that the council defends its decision to refuse these applications for reputational and financial reasons. So whether the planning committee approve or reject a planning application, we then have to defend that planning committee's decision, whether it was against officer advice or not.
Well, that's correct, Councillor Paul. That's why the reassurance given by Councillor Osborne that the committee are very careful when they consider the decisions they're taking.
And it is something that is not readily accepted by people, that, you know, irrespective of the decision, we still have to defend, or could have to defend at all times.
That's correct. But I think that's, I'll come back to Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, I think it's so people get the right message. Just because a planning committee does vote against officer's advice, it doesn't mean that it's totally irresponsible and wrong. It can be a decision that an officer, although has recommended refusal or approval, and members think it should be refused, it could be very balanced and very close arguments either way. And I would think one of the ones that is against officer advice there is one of those such applications where you could go either way.
Thank you. But what you said before was, of course, the committee considered very carefully.
That's right.
When reaching that conclusion. Thank you, Steve. Councillor Chandler.
Very briefly, Chairman, if planning permission is granted, there is no right of appeal. So the condition of having to defend that decision doesn't arise. However, of course, there may be somebody who thinks they have a chance to call for a judicial review, which would be very expensive, but it doesn't happen very often.
No. One of the more controversial applications.
Yes.
That's okay. Yeah. Okay, are there any more comments on the floor? If not, can we read the one recommendation here? Agreed. Thank you, Councillor. Moving on to environment issues now. Councillor Guildford, Climate Local Commitment for Hampshire Climate Change Strategy, 2014-17.
Thank you, Chair. The report starts with the statement the Council is a climate local signatory. Being new to the environment portfolio folder, that was, I had to ask myself the question, what is that? For the purpose of the new members, I just want to go through that a little bit, although it is detailed in the report. The answer is that climate local is about recognising what effort can be made at our level to minimise the effect that climate change will have locally, nationally and globally. At the same time, working towards being prepared for its inevitable effects. As a follow-up to becoming a climate local authority, the Council is required to report on its progress annually. This report aims to provide information on the progress against our climate local commitment. The report also seeks to inform and refresh the Northamptonshire Climate Change Strategy 2014-17. To date, over 100 local authorities have signed up to Climate Local. Along with DDC, this statement will be different to the report. Corby is the only additional authority in the county to have done so. Good progress has been made on the climate local commitments as confirmed in the Appendix 1. I don't intend to go through the full appendix, hopefully you've read it before this evening. The Northamptonshire Climate Change Strategy, shown in Appendix 2, was originally developed in 2010. The strategy has been updated so it can continue for another 3 years and endorsed by the Northampton Local Nature Partnership. It will be recommended to other councils and agencies for formal adoption by the chair of the Local Nature Partnership. Highlights of the period have been 16% reduction in carbon emissions across the county and 21% per capita carbon emission reduction. The successful implementation of over 95% of actions in the strategy action plans. 37% of local wildlife sites are now under active management, and there have been successful peer learning events and progress on flood risk management. However, progress on adapting to climate change more recently is less clear, and the refreshed strategy better aligns itself to the National Adaptation Programme to help clarify the future action required on this. So in conclusion, Climate Local is a local government association initiative aimed at encouraging local authorities to commit to minimising their impact on climate change through greenhouse gas emissions reduction and adapting to its inevitable effects. I therefore ask the group to accept the recommendations.
Thanks, Steve. Councillor Guildford. So we have 2 recommendations before us. Councillor Moore.
Thank you for coming in to speak, Chair. It's a quick question here. In the paragraph, you mentioned, Councillor Guildford, 16% reduction in carbon emissions across the county and 21% capita carbon emission reduction, yet Daventry District only had a 1.5 per capita. That's quite a significant difference. Why are we so low compared to the average? And what can we do to improve our performance going forward?
Okay. Should we I'll take a couple more, then we'll come back to that point. Councillor Campbell. Question, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just had, it was interesting to note that, so it's Corby as well as also in this county.
Yeah.
I just wondered how easy it was to provide collective leadership and to encourage, to support other councils when only 2 in the county are signed up to this, and what are we doing to try and increase that number. And then the second question I had was part of Appendix 1, the grid, about monitoring the environmental service contract. The reference is, so NER ISO compliant. During 2013-14, waste to landfill increased by 2.6%, but had reduced by 8.9% on the previous year. So obviously means 2012-13 was a pretty bad year. And I just wondered if, again for the benefit of new members, but also for me, because I can't remember, how those measures compare with when the service was in-house, specifically the waste to landfill figures. Thank you.
Okay, I'll stop there for a minute. Simon will answer the point.
Can I deal with the second point? I think it was Councillor Campbell about the other councils.
Yeah.
They'll sign up. At the Northamptonshire Leadership Group, which involves the councils, but also other public bodies, like the Enterprise Partnership, there is absolute commitment to this agenda. I've seen that before, but I go there wearing the hat of the chair of the Local Nature Partnership. So I have seen the absolute commitment. The chair has been absolutely keen to promote this within authorities and agencies. And because I wear that chair hat, I'm thinking it's only right that we as this council, wear the other hat, as this council, are showing once again our green credentials. We've had it for some years now, but it becomes more and more relevant. So the idea is for us to set an example here, and I intend to try then to persuade, using leadership group as well as support the other councils to join that. That's the intention, Chairman.
Thanks, Simon.
There's
Simon?
technical bits as well, maybe Simon can assist.
With regard to the comment about the report on page 30 states that final paragraph states 16% reduction in carbon emissions countrywide and 1.5% in Daventry district. We've got some major road routes that do count against us in Daventry district, so that has a bearing. But if I could also refer you to page 34, the progress for 2014-15 provides some more information. We have made good gains in terms of carbon reduction in previous years, so the amount we can now achieve year on year is more limited. So I think that
explains it.
yes.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Councillor Lomax.
Thank you for allowing me to speak again. It's page 35, the first item there, the increase in the number of energy efficiency measures in business. It doesn't seem to me that the progress column actually says anything. And I wonder if I could have a little bit more explanation about what progress has been made. It simply says aims to signpost organisations.
Thank you.
And that's not progress.
I'll deal with that in part, Chairman. There's a role for us in promoting. You take people towards so that you can make them agree to use a similar analogy. So our progress is to sustain that network, and that maybe could be better captured in here, that we sustain the network, because questions have been in the past, is there any point in carrying on? And frankly, the answer is yes. And it's about trying to get people, businesses, etc., to engage. So I think perhaps we can capture the narrative better. When I was going through this again, was thinking there are still some other improvements I think could be made, and I would do that for the purpose I said earlier. So there is progress in one, sustaining it, and two, going out and finding new methods to try and engage the business and community, because that's also been addressed as well. So perhaps there is some extra narrative that can be included.
So maybe smart progress, because obviously that's a very open listed by saying aim to do something.
Yeah, but I think it's a case of the business network as a body.
We can try and do something.
Just try and get others to do those things.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Lomax. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I want to very quickly come back to Maria. Thank you for a point. I also know that obviously it's a lagging indicator because that relates to 2011. But I very much welcome if we sign up to this again and certainly maintain the momentum.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Well, Councillor Campbell.
I don't think I had my questions answered about comparative data on the environmental sector.
Fair point. Time's out.
Thank you, Chairman.
My apologies.
The percentage of waste going to landfill is down as compared to last year of in-house performance under this contract. Obviously there are more properties, and therefore I suspect, I need to go back and check, but I suspect the actual landfill tonnage figure is slightly higher as a result of combining a slightly improved percentage with an increase in properties.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I'd urge also members to note that at our next Scribble Improvement Committee meeting, we have invited Councillor Guildford along, who will speak about environmental performance again, and members are very much welcome to attend this.
When is that going to come?
This, we always have a good discussion on this, and Councillor Guildford is attending next time.
When is the meeting? Do you know?
It's 30th of June.
30th of June.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, I misheard you. Yeah, so please come along. And no doubt the Scrutiny and Improvement Committee will possibly launch another programme some this year.
Super. Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Any other comments? If not, can we agree the two recommendations before us? Agree. Thank you. There is no urgent business. That concludes this evening's business. So thank you for being with us. Thank you.